For thousands of years, humans moved stones so massive that even today they leave us asking how. Long before machines, metal tools, or written plans, ancient societies across the world raised monuments that still stand in silence. From Stonehenge's towering Sarsens to Egypt's colossal obelisks, from the walking statues of Easter Island to the precision blocks of Puma Punku, this is not one mystery, but many. Each culture solved the same problem in its own way, using patience, coordination, and deep understanding of weight and balance. This documentary brings those stories together to explore what archaeology can explain, what evidence still hides, and why ancient humans were far more skilled and organized than we often imagine. Chapter 1. Stonehenge's Sarsen Stones. Stonehenge stands on a wide open plain in southern England, quiet and exposed to the sky. Today it feels permanent, almost timeless. But thousands of years ago, this place was empty grassland. No roads, no cities, no metal tools. And yet, over generations, people brought some of the largest stones ever moved in prehistoric Europe to this exact spot and raised them with care. The biggest of these stones are called Sarsens. Most weigh between 25 and 40 tons. A few are even larger. One of the horizontal stones that once rested on top may have approached 50 tons. To put that in simple terms, each stone weighed as much as several modern buses combined, and every one of them had to be moved, shaped, lifted, and placed without machines. Stonehenge was not built all at once. The site changed slowly over more than 1,000 years, beginning around 3000 BCE. Early phases were simple: ditches, wooden posts, and earth banks. The massive stone circle we recognize today came later, around 2500 BCE, during a time when farming communities were spreading across Britain. These people had no writing system. They left no plans, no instructions, no explanation. What remains are the stones themselves. For a long time, one basic question dominated research. Where did these stones come from? The smaller blue stones were traced to Wales decades ago, but the larger Sarsens were harder to pin down. They all look similar, and southern England is full of Sarsen stone scattered across the landscape. In 2020, a breakthrough finally narrowed it down. Using geochemical testing, comparing tiny mineral signatures inside the stones, researchers were able to match most of Stonehenge's Sarsens to a single area, the Marlborough Downs, about 15 miles to the north. That distance may not sound extreme, but in a world without wheels, carts, or pack animals, it was a serious challenge. The stones did not roll themselves downhill. The route crossed uneven ground, shallow valleys, and soft chalk soil. Each stone had to be quarried using stone tools, shaped enough to be workable, and then hauled across open land. Every step required planning, timing, and coordination. Archaeologists agree on one important point. The technology was simple: wooden sledges, thick ropes made from plant fibers or animal hide, possibly wooden rollers, though that idea is debated. No cranes, no pulleys made of metal. Just wood, rope, and human strength. What's still debated is how these tools were actually used. Some experiments suggest stones were dragged on sledges over wooden tracks with water or animal fat poured on the ground to reduce friction. Other tests show rollers can work, but only on firm ground and with constant control. There is also a seasonal theory that stones were moved in winter when frozen ground made hauling easier. None of these ideas fully explain every detail, but each is based on real tests, not guesswork. Experimental archaeology has played a major role here. Teams have tried moving multi-ton stones using reconstructed Neolithic tools. They've proven that it's possible, but also exhausting, slow, and risky. Even a small mistake could snap a rope or tip a stone. That means the builders of Stonehenge weren't just strong, they were organized. This is where the mystery deepens. Moving a 50-ton stone isn't just a physical problem, it's a social one. Hundreds of people had to work together, possibly over weeks or months. They needed food, shelter, and clear roles. Someone had to decide when to move, where to stop, and how to adjust when something went wrong. Unlike later civilizations, like Egypt during the Old Kingdom, where monuments were supported by centralized power, These communities left no signs of kings or written authority, and yet they achieved something that still challenges us to explain how coordination worked in a prehistoric world. By the time the stones reached the plain, the hardest part was still ahead. Getting them there was only half the story. Raising them into position required another level of control, balance, and patience, one that deserves its own careful look. Chapter 2. The Trilithon Stones of Baalbek. Baalbek sits high in the Bekaa Valley of modern-day Lebanon, surrounded by mountains and open sky. Today, the ruins feel calm and sunlit, but 2,000 years ago, this place was one of the most ambitious construction sites in the Roman world. At its center stood the Temple of Jupiter, built on a massive stone platform unlike anything else Rome ever attempted. Hidden within that platform are 3 stones known as the Trilithon. Each one is estimated to weigh around 800 tons. That makes them not just heavier than the stones at Stonehenge, but among the heaviest stones ever moved by humans at any point in history. Even with modern cranes, lifting a single block of that size would be difficult. The Romans were not beginners at engineering. By the 1st century CE, they had already built roads across Europe, aqueducts that carried water for miles, and concrete structures that still stand today. They understood cranes, pulleys, levers, and balance. Roman writers like Vitruvius even described lifting machines in detail. And yet no Roman text explains how stones like the Trilithon were moved or set in place. That silence is part of the mystery. Just a short distance from Baalbek lies the ancient quarry where these stones came from. It is still visible today. In that quarry rests another massive block known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, even larger than the Trilithon stones, weighing over 1,000 tons. Nearby, even bigger stones have been identified in recent years, still partially buried and never moved. These unfinished stones tell us something important. The Romans knew how to cut stone at an enormous scale. Tool marks along the sides show the use of iron chisels and wedges. The stone was carefully separated from the bedrock, shaped and prepared for transport. But at some point, work stopped. The largest blocks were left behind. Why? One theory is simple practicality. Perhaps the stones cracked. Perhaps the project changed. Or perhaps Roman engineers reached a limit they could not safely cross. But that raises another question. If stones of 800 tons were too risky to move, why were 3 already sitting perfectly placed in the temple platform? The Trilithon stones are not just massive. They are set with remarkable precision. They form a straight line, locked tightly together, resting several meters above ground level. This means they were not just dragged into place at ground height and left there. They had to be raised or at least slid into position along an elevated structure. Some scholars argue the stones were never fully lifted. Instead, they may have been slid along massive earthen ramps, gradually raised as the platform itself was built up around them. This method was used elsewhere in Roman construction on a smaller scale. Earth was cheap, labor was available. Over time, ramps could be removed, leaving the stone in place. Other researchers are not convinced. The height, alignment, and weight of the stones make even ramp-based solutions difficult to prove. No remains of such ramps survive, and the amount of earth required would have been enormous, even by Roman standards. There is also the question of purpose. Roman builders were practical. They usually favored efficiency and repeatable methods. Smaller blocks could have supported the temple just as well. Using stones of this size offered no clear structural advantage. So why choose them at all? Some suggest it was about symbolism. Baalbek was a frontier city, far from Rome. Using stones beyond anything else in the empire may have been a statement of power, meant to impress both locals and gods. Others believe the massive platform may predate the Romans, and that Roman builders inherited and reused an earlier foundation they did not fully understand. That idea is controversial and debated heavily. What is clear is that Baalbek sits at the edge of what Roman engineering can comfortably explain. The tools are known, the people are known, the stones are real. But the exact method, how human hands guided blocks heavier than modern tanks into perfect alignment, remains uncertain. Before looking at what might be missing from the historical record, it helps to understand what Roman engineers could do elsewhere, and where their known methods begin to fall short. Chapter 3. Easter Island's walking Moai. Easter Island, known to its people as Rapa Nui, is one of the most isolated inhabited places on Earth. It sits alone in the Pacific Ocean, more than 1,000 miles from the nearest major landmass. When European ships first arrived in the early 1700s, sailors were stunned by what they saw. Across the island stood hundreds of massive stone statues, some taller than a two-story building, facing inland as if watching over the land. These statues are called Moai. Most weigh between 30 and 80 tons. A few are even larger. They were carved from volcanic rock at a quarry called Rano Raraku, then transported across uneven ground to platforms scattered around the island's coast. No wheels, no metal tools, no animals to pull heavy loads, just people. From the beginning, the question wasn't whether the Moai were impressive, it was how they got there. Early European visitors recorded local stories that seemed impossible. Islanders told them the statues walked to their final positions. For centuries, that idea was dismissed as myth or symbolism. Moving an 80-ton stone figure by walking it across the landscape sounded like fantasy. But the oral tradition never fully disappeared, and neither did the physical evidence. Along ancient roads leading away from the quarry, archaeologists found fallen Moai lying face down or on their backs. At first, these were thought to be abandoned during a collapse or sudden disaster. Later studies suggested something else. Many of these statues appeared to have fallen while upright, not while lying flat. Their bases showed wear patterns that didn't match sled dragging. Their sides were rounded, not flat. At the quarry itself, nearly half-finished Moai still lie frozen in stone, as if the workers simply walked away. Tool marks show how they were carved using stone tools, slowly shaped over months or years. The statues were made with a wide base and a slight forward lean, an odd choice if they were meant to be dragged flat. By the late 20th century, researchers began to take the old stories more seriously. Experiments followed. Teams built replica Moai weighing several tons and tested different transport methods. Dragging the statues horizontally on wooden sleds did work, but it required large amounts of timber. On an island with limited trees, this raised questions. Deforestation was already a major issue in Rapa Nui's history. Then came a different approach. In one experiment, researchers stood a replica Moai upright and tied ropes to its sides and back. By pulling alternately from left to right, a small group of people was able to rock the statue forward. It didn't slide, it stepped. Slowly, carefully, it moved across the ground while staying upright. It looked unmistakably like walking. This method matched several pieces of evidence at once. It explained the statue shape, the oral traditions, and the fallen Moai along roads. It also required fewer people and less wood than sled transport. The statues were not dragged like cargo, they were guided. Still, the debate isn't settled. Some archaeologists argue that both methods were used at different times. Others point out that experiments have been done on smaller replicas, not full-size Moai weighing 80 tons. Scaling up introduces new risks. A broken rope or misstep could mean disaster. But even if the walking method worked, it raises a deeper question. Moving one statue is one thing. Rapa Nui moved hundreds. This was a small island society. Food had to be grown locally. Labor had to be shared between farming, fishing, carving, and transport. The work likely took place over generations, not years. That kind of effort requires coordination, trust, and shared purpose. The real mystery of the Moai is not hidden technology. It's human organization. How a small, isolated community repeatedly came together to do something enormous. Not once, but again and again. Before looking at how that social system functioned, it helps to understand what daily life on Rapa Nui looked like while the statues were still moving across the land. Chapter 4. Egypt's Colossal Obelisks. Long before the pyramids defined Egypt in the modern imagination, stone already ruled the landscape. Along the Nile, towering monuments rose not just outward, but upward, single pieces of stone carved, moved, and lifted into the sky. These were obelisks, tall, narrow, and perfectly shaped. Some of them weighed more than 300 tons. Each one was carved from a single block of granite, without cracks, without joints, without room for error. Most of the largest obelisks came from one place, Aswan in southern Egypt. Here, granite lies close to the surface, hard and unforgiving. In the ancient quarries, the evidence still remains. Scattered across the rock are round stone tools made of dolerite, a tougher volcanic stone. These pounders were used to slowly chip and crush granite, hour after hour, day after day. No metal blades, no drilling machines, just repeated force and patience. The clearest proof of how this work happened is the unfinished obelisk. It still lies attached to the bedrock, abandoned mid-project. If completed, it would have weighed more than 1,000 tons. Cracks appeared during carving, and the project was halted. That moment, frozen in stone, shows both the ambition of Egyptian builders and the risks they faced. One mistake could erase years of labor. Once freed from the quarry, an obelisk had to be transported. This is where Egypt's geography mattered. The Nile was not just a river, it was a highway. Reliefs carved into temple walls show massive statues and stones loaded onto barges, pulled by fleets of boats. These scenes are not symbolic. They are practical. We see ropes, crews, and supervisors. We even see water being poured in front of sleds to reduce friction as stones were dragged to the riverbank. Experiments in modern times have confirmed that wet sand can cut friction almost in half. That small detail, carved into stone thousands of years ago, shows careful observation and applied knowledge. The Egyptians understood materials, even if they never wrote down equations. Transport, however, was only part of the problem. Raising an obelisk was the final and most dangerous step. No ancient crane could lift 300 tons straight into the air. There is no evidence of metal frameworks strong enough for that task. Instead, scholars believe the Egyptians used gravity itself as their tool. One leading idea involved sand ramps and controlled excavation. The obelisk would be dragged into a pit filled with sand, positioned horizontally. Then, as sand was slowly removed from beneath one end, the stone would begin to tilt upward. With careful timing, ropes, and supports, it could be guided into a vertical position. This method explains something important: precision. Obelisks were not roughly placed. They were aligned carefully, often marking temple entrances or sacred axes connected to the sun. Many were topped with pyramid-shaped caps that caught the light at dawn. A small miscalculation could cause the stone to fall, crack, or crush workers below. Egypt left more records than almost any other ancient civilization. Inscriptions name kings, dates, even work crews. We know when many obelisks were raised and who ordered them. But nowhere do we find a clear step-by-step guide explaining the process from quarry to sky. That absence is striking. It suggests that much of the knowledge was practical, passed down through experience rather than written instruction. Builders learn by doing, watching, correcting, and repeating. The real puzzle is not whether Egypt had the skill. The monuments prove that. The question is how such enormous projects were timed, staffed, and coordinated over years, sometimes decades, without written engineering manuals or centralized blueprints as we understand them today. To understand that system, we have to look beyond the stones themselves and examine the people who moved them, fed them, and organized their lives around building for eternity. Chapter 5. The 50-ton stones of Ollantaytambo. Ollantaytambo sits high in the sacred valley of the Andes, where steep mountains press in from every side and the air thins with altitude. Even today, reaching the site requires climbing narrow roads and crossing fast-moving rivers. In the 15th century, when the Incas began building here, the challenge was far greater. And yet they chose this place to construct one of their most ambitious stone complexes. The stones of Ollantaytambo are not subtle. Some of the largest blocks used in its terraces and temple walls weigh close to 50 tons. They are cut with sharp edges and fitted together so tightly that a blade cannot slide between them. There is no mortar. The stones hold themselves in place through precision alone. What makes this even more remarkable is where those stones came from. The main quarry lies on the opposite side of the Urubamba River, several kilometers away. Between the quarry and the site stand steep slopes, uneven ground, and a river that can flood violently during the rainy season. There were no wheels in the Andes, no horses or oxen to pull heavy loads. Metal tools were unknown. everything depended on human strength and coordination. Spanish chroniclers who arrived in the region shortly after the fall of the Inca Empire recorded stories they struggled to believe. One account describes thousands of workers hauling stones with ropes while singing to keep time. Another mentions stones slipping, crushing workers, and being abandoned where they fell. These stories were not meant to glorify Inca skill. They were observations, written by outsiders trying to understand what they were seeing. The Incas themselves left no written language. Instead, they relied on memory, oral tradition, and systems like the quipu, knotted cords used to record numbers and possibly events. That means everything we know about stone transport at Ollantaytambo comes from archaeology, landscape analysis, and a few early eyewitness accounts. The roads tell part of the story. Inca roads were narrow but carefully engineered, with steps carved into rock and retaining walls to control erosion. Along possible transport routes, archaeologists have found traces of stone ramps and flattened paths. At the quarry, partially carved blocks remain, some abandoned mid-process. Their shapes match stones already placed at the site, linking the quarry directly to construction. Rope was critical. The Incas were masters of fiber technology. They twisted ropes from plant fibers and llama hair, creating cords strong enough to suspend bridges across canyons. The same techniques could have been used to haul stone. Thick ropes, combined with wooden levers and human pulling power, could move enormous weight, slowly. Some researchers suggest log rollers were used on flatter sections. Others argue that rollers would have been unstable on steep slopes and narrow paths. Experiments attempting to move replica stones show that dragging on sled-like platforms can work, but only with careful control and many people pulling in unison. Crossing the river remains one of the biggest unanswered questions. No clear evidence of a stone bridge strong enough for 50-ton loads exists. One idea is that stones were hauled during the dry season, when water levels dropped. Another is that temporary causeways or reinforced fords were built and later dismantled. So far, no definitive proof has been found. What is clear is that precision was never lost. The stones arrived intact. Their edges were not shattered. Their faces aligned perfectly even today, centuries after earthquakes shook the valley. That level of control suggests planning that went far beyond brute force. The mystery of Ollantaytambo is not about whether the Incas could move heavy stones. The walls stand as proof. The deeper question is how they coordinated thousands of people across dangerous terrain, fed them, organized labor, and maintained exact standards without written plans. To understand that, we need to look at how Inca society itself was structured and why collective effort, not individual command, made feats like this possible. Chapter 6. Puma Punku's Precision Blocks. High on the Altiplano of western Bolivia, near the cold waters of Lake Titicaca, lies Puma Punku. At first glance, it doesn't look like much. Scattered stone blocks lie broken and displaced, spread across a wide open plain. There are no towering walls, no standing columns. But when archaeologists began to study the stones more closely, Puma Punku revealed itself as one of the most precise and puzzling construction sites in the ancient world. Puma Punku was part of a larger ceremonial center linked to the Tiwanaku civilization. Radiocarbon dating and archaeological evidence place its main construction period between roughly 500 and 1000 CE. At that time, Tiwanaku was a powerful Andean society, long before the rise of the Inca. They had no written language, no wheeled vehicles, and no animals capable of pulling heavy loads. Yet here they work stone with a level of accuracy that still surprises modern engineers. Some of the blocks at Puma Punku weigh over 100 tons. Many are made of red sandstone, quarried from hills at least 10 kilometers away. Others are carved from hard andesite, sourced even further from the site. Transporting stones of that size would be difficult at sea level. At Puma Punku's elevation, nearly 13,000 feet above sea level, every movement would have been slower, harder, and more exhausting. What first drew serious attention to the site was not just the size of the stones, but their shape. Many blocks are cut into complex forms with right angles, flat surfaces, and repeating measurements. Some pieces interlock like parts of a machine. Grooves, drilled holes, and sharp corners appear again and again. often matching each other closely, as if they followed a shared standard. Early visitors struggled to explain this. In the past, some claimed the stones were too perfect to be ancient. Those claims have not held up. Careful study shows clear signs of human workmanship using simple tools. Copper chisels, though softer than stone, can cut rock when paired with abrasive sand. By rubbing, grinding, and repeating the process endlessly, smooth surfaces and sharp edges can be achieved. It is slow work, but it works. Archaeologists have recreated these methods in controlled settings. Using copper tools and sand, researchers have carved stone with surprising accuracy. The process demands time, skill, and consistency, but not lost technology. Still, carving is only part of the story. Once shaped, the stones had to be moved. There is no evidence of roads wide enough for rollers or sleds built specifically for stone transport. The terrain around Punku is uneven and marshy in places, especially near the lake. Llamas, the primary pack animals of the Andes, cannot pull heavy loads. That leaves human labor as the main force. One possibility is that stones were dragged using thick ropes and wooden supports, moved a short distance at a time. Another is that seasonal changes played a role. During wetter periods, the ground may have been softer or partially flooded, allowing stones to slide more easily over prepared surfaces. None of these ideas fully explains how stones weighing over 100 tons were controlled without cracking or tipping. Then there is the question of why Punku looks the way it does today. The site appears deliberately dismantled. Stones are broken, but not randomly. Many blocks seem to have been pulled apart rather than collapsed by natural disaster. There is little evidence of violent destruction. Instead, it looks as if construction stopped, and the site was slowly taken apart or abandoned. Why a society capable of such careful planning and precision would leave Punku unfinished or intentionally dismantled remains unclear. Climate change, shifting political power, or religious transformation have all been suggested, but no single explanation fits all the evidence. What remains certain is that Punku was not crude, experimental, or accidental. It reflects long-term planning, shared knowledge, and disciplined labor carried out under extreme environmental conditions. To understand how that level of precision was maintained across an entire complex, we need to look more closely at how Tiwanaku society organized work, measured stone, and passed technical knowledge from one generation to the next. Chapter 7. Göbekli Tepe's Hidden Megaliths. Long before cities, before metal tools, before farming as we know it, people gathered on a low hill in southeastern Turkey and began to move stone. The place is called Göbekli Tepe. When it was first excavated in the 1990s, archaeologists expected a small, ordinary settlement. What they uncovered instead changed how we think about the very beginning of organized human effort. Göbekli Tepe dates back to around 9,600 BCE. That is more than 11,000 years ago. At that time, humans in this region lived as hunter-gatherers. They followed seasonal food sources. They did not grow crops. They did not raise animals. They did not build permanent towns. And yet, at Göbekli Tepe, they quarried, carved, and erected massive limestone pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons. Each pillar is shaped like a tall T, standing upright in circular stone enclosures. Many are decorated with carved animals, foxes, snakes, birds, and boars, cut directly into the stone surface. The carvings are deliberate and detailed, not rough sketches. This alone tells us that time was invested here, a great deal of it. The stone itself came from the hill. Limestone lies close to the surface at Göbekli Tepe. Quarry marks show where blocks were cut free using simple stone tools. No metal blades, no chisels, just flint, patience, and repeated effort. Experiments have shown that limestone is workable with such tools, but the process is slow. Shaping a single pillar could have taken months. Then there is the matter of lifting. The pillars were set into stone sockets cut into bedrock floors. They stand upright, balanced, and aligned. Even at 20 tons, this is not trivial, but unlike later sites such as Baalbek or Egypt, Göbekli Tepe did not rely on extreme weight. It relied on coordination. Archaeologists studying the site have found no signs of wheeled transport, no beasts of burden, and no advanced lifting devices. What they have found are stone hammers, flint tools, and evidence of repeated human presence over long periods. The most likely explanation is also the simplest. Groups of people working together, using ropes, wooden poles, and gravity to raise a stone step by step. Modern reconstructions suggest this is possible. With enough people pulling and stabilizing, a stone pillar can be tilted upright from a shallow pit. Small adjustments, repeated carefully, can bring it into position. No single person controls the process. Everyone has to move together. That is where the real mystery begins. Göbekli Tepe was not a village. There are no houses, no hearths, no trash pits showing daily life. Instead, the site appears to have been a gathering place, visited, worked on, and then left. People came here with a shared purpose, completed heavy labor, and then returned to their seasonal lives. This means organization existed before agriculture, not after it. Someone had to decide when to gather. Someone had to plan how many people were needed. Food had to be available during construction, even though no farming took place on site. Knowledge of stoneworking had to be passed on, even though people did not live here permanently. There is no evidence of kings or rulers, no palaces, no graves that suggest a ruling class. If leadership existed, it was likely temporary or based on skill rather than power. Perhaps Göbekli Tepe was built because people wanted to gather. Or perhaps gathering to build is what brought people together in the first place. What we can say with confidence is this: the stones of Göbekli Tepe were not moved by advanced machines or lost technologies. They were moved by people who knew how to work together, long before the systems we usually associate with large construction even existed. To understand how that cooperation functioned and why it mattered so deeply, we need to look closer at what Göbekli Tepe was used for and why it was eventually buried by the very people who built it. Chapter 8. Japan's Masuda Iwafune. In a quiet forested area near the town of Asuka in central Japan sits a stone that feels out of place. It does not rise on a mountain peak or mark a famous shrine. There are no inscriptions explaining its meaning, no records mention its creation. It is simply there, huge, carved, and unfinished. This stone is known as Masuda Iwafune. The name roughly means the stone ship of Masuda, but that tells us very little. The block itself is enormous, estimated to weigh around 800 tons. It is carved directly from bedrock, shaped into a massive rectangular form with clean edges and sharp angles. 2 square holes are cut into its flat top, perfectly aligned. The stone has clearly been worked by human hands, yet no one knows why it exists. Masuda Iwafune is usually dated to Japan's Kofun period, roughly between the 3rd and 7th centuries CE. This was a time when powerful clans ruled regions of Japan, building large burial mounds and beginning early state formation. Stoneworking existed, but nothing else from this period compares to Masuda Iwafune in size or ambition. That alone makes it strange. Archaeologists who have examined the stone agree on one thing: it was deliberately carved. Tool marks can still be seen on its surfaces. These marks match techniques known from ancient Japanese stonework, likely using iron tools. The cuts are not random, they follow straight lines. The corners are intentional. This was planned work, not natural erosion. But beyond that, certainty fades. There are no written records from the time that describe the stone. Early Japanese chronicles like the Nihon Shoki and Kojiki mention rulers, rituals, and tombs. But Masuda Iwafune is never named. No legends clearly explain it either. Unlike famous, unexplained ruins elsewhere, it exists almost silently in the historical record. Because the stone was carved from bedrock, transport is not the issue here. No one had to move it across land or water. The challenge lies in the carving itself. Shaping a massive stone this large would have required skilled workers, time, and organization. Someone had to order the work. Someone had to decide the shape, and someone had to support the labor required to carry it out. So what was it for? One theory suggests it was connected to burial practices. The Kofun period is named after massive burial mounds, often built for elite figures. Some researchers think Masuda Iwafune may have been part of an unfinished tomb complex, perhaps abandoned after political changes or the death of a patron. Others have proposed a religious or ceremonial purpose. The Osaka region is rich in ancient ritual sites. Stone objects were sometimes used as markers or platforms for ceremonies tied to the land, ancestors, or early beliefs that later blended into Shinto practices. A more speculative idea links the stone to astronomy. The square holes on top have been studied for possible alignment with the sun or stars. So far, no clear astronomical function has been confirmed. Measurements vary, and no consistent pattern has been proven. Still, the precision of the cuts keeps the question open. What makes Masuda Iwafune especially puzzling is that it appears unfinished. The lower sections are rougher. The stone seems prepared for further shaping that never happened. There are no nearby structures clearly connected to it, no tools left behind. Just an enormous effort that stopped partway through. Why would a society capable of organizing such work abandon it without explanation? To explore that question, we need to look more closely at what was happening in Japan during the Asuka and Kofun periods, and how shifts in power, belief, and labor may have left Masuda Iwafune frozen in time. Chapter 9. Coral Castle's Modern Parallel. South of Miami, on a quiet stretch of land, stands a structure that feels ancient at first glance, but isn't. Coral Castle was built in the early 20th century, not by a forgotten civilization, but by one man. His name was Edward Leedskalnin. He was small, thin, and lived almost entirely alone. And yet over nearly 3 decades, he moved and shaped blocks of coral limestone weighing up to 30 tons each. What makes Coral Castle relevant to ancient mysteries is not mystery itself, but documentation. Photographs exist, neighbors gave interviews, tools were left behind. This is not a legend passed down through oral tradition. It is a recorded case of heavy stone construction without modern machinery. Leedskalnin began building Coral Castle around 1923. He worked mostly at night. He used no electricity, no engines, no cranes. When curious neighbors asked how he did it, he gave short answers, often saying he understood the laws of weight and leverage. He never claimed supernatural help. He never described secret technology. The stone he worked with was oolitic limestone, sometimes called coral rock. It is softer when freshly cut, then hardens over time. Leedskalnin quarried it directly from the ground using hand tools. Photographs show tripods made of wooden poles, block and tackle pulleys, chains and winches. Everything was simple. Everything relied on balance. One of the most famous features of Coral Castle is its gate. It weighed about 9 tons and could be pushed open with a single finger. For years, it remained perfectly balanced on a metal shaft. When it finally failed in the 1980s, modern engineers struggled to replicate the balance using cranes and heavy equipment. The original placement had been exact. Leedskalnin also moved his entire site once. In the 1930s, as nearby development increased, he loaded his stone blocks onto a truck, alone, and transported them several miles to a new location. The driver who delivered the truck later said he never saw how the stones were loaded. When he returned, the cargo was already secured. No evidence suggests tricks or hidden helpers. Leedskalnin worked slowly. Sometimes a single stone took weeks or months to move. He adjusted, tested, and corrected until balance worked in his favor. This patience is easy to overlook. Modern construction relies on speed. Ancient and pre-industrial building did not. The tools Leedskalnin used are not impressive by modern standards, but they are effective. A lever multiplies force, a pulley changes direction, balance reduces weight to control. These principles were understood long before modern physics gave them names. Ancient builders didn't need equations, they needed experience. What Coral Castle shows is not that one man had secret knowledge, but that simple methods applied carefully over time can move stones that seem impossible at first glance. This matters when we look back at places like Stonehenge, Ollantaytambo, or Baalbek. Those sites involved hundreds or thousands of workers, not one. They also had more time. Leedskalnin never explained everything he did. Some details are lost, but enough remains to prove a critical point. Large stones do not require advanced machines. They require planning, patience, and control. Coral Castle does not solve ancient mysteries, but it removes one excuse, the idea that ancient people must have had technology we no longer possess. What they had was time, cooperation, and a deep understanding of how weight behaves. To see how this modern example connects back to the ancient world as a whole, we need to step back and compare what these different cultures shared and what still remains unanswered. Chapter 10, What We Know and What We Still Don't. By the time we step back from all these places, Stonehenge, Baalbek, Rapa Nui, Egypt, the Andes, the Altiplano, Göbekli Tepe, and even Coral Castle, a pattern begins to form. Not a single method, not a hidden machine, but something quieter and more consistent. Across continents and thousands of years, humans kept doing the same thing. They gathered, they planned, they experimented, and they learned how to move stone using what they had. Archaeology can now say some things with confidence. Large stones were not moved by magic, lost energy fields, or forgotten super technology. They were moved by human labor combined with simple tools: ropes, sledges, levers, ramps, rollers, water, sand, gravity, and time. Lots of time. In every case where experiments have been done carefully, those basic methods have worked, at least on a smaller scale. But archaeology also has limits. What it can rarely recover is the process. We find the finished stones, the quarries, and sometimes the tools. What we almost never find is the day-to-day decision-making. Who gave the signal to pull? How many attempts failed before one succeeded? How many stones cracked and were abandoned? Those moments leave almost no trace. This is why there is no single answer to the question of how ancient humans moved massive stones. Stonehenge was built by farming communities with seasonal labor. Göbekli Tepe was built by hunter-gatherers who gathered temporarily. The Incas relied on state-organized labor. Egypt used centralized authority tied to religion and kingship. Tiwanaku worked through shared standards and long-term planning. Each society solved the problem differently because each society was different. What they shared was coordination. Moving a 50-ton stone is not mainly a test of strength. It is a test of organization. People must move together. They must trust timing. They must accept slow progress. And they must be willing to repeat the same action hundreds or thousands of times. This is where modern thinking often struggles. We are used to speed. Ancient construction was slow by design. Projects stretched across decades or lifetimes. Knowledge was passed down through practice, not manuals. A technique didn't need to be written if everyone involved already knew it. That also explains why so many details are lost. Most ancient builders had no reason to record how they worked. For them, the method was obvious. The monument was the message. When societies collapsed, changed belief systems, or abandoned sites, the living knowledge vanished with them. What remained were stones without instructions. Even in cases like Egypt, where writing survives, the records focus on kings, gods, and outcomes, not engineering steps. A wall carving showing a statue being pulled tells us that it happened, not every adjustment made along the way. This absence of detail leaves room for debate, but not for dismissal. Ancient humans were not primitive. They understood materials through experience. They knew how weight behaved because they worked with it daily. They organized labor not through abstract theory, but through shared purpose, ritual, belief, power, or survival. When we ask how a 52-ton stone was moved without machines, the most honest answer is this: not by one trick and not the same way every time. It was done through patience, planning, and people working together longer than modern projects usually allow. What still remains unknown is not whether it was possible, but how many attempts it took to get it right. In the next part, we can look more closely at why modern experiments still struggle to recreate these feats at full scale, and what that tells us about the difference between knowing how something works and knowing how to live with it long enough to succeed.